Please subscribe before we start. In the dim glow of a rain-soaked Beijing alleyway, where the city lights blurred into streaks of neon against the windshield of a blacked-out SUV, Shen Yue stood frozen in the doorway of her private studio, her heart hammering like a drum in her chest. What she saw next shattered every expectation she had built over the last decade of her carefully guarded life. There, illuminated by the faint overhead bulb, was Dylan Wang, her longtime co-star, the man whose smile had lit up countless screens and whose name had been whispered in tabloid rumors for years, holding a towering garment bag that could only contain one impossible thing: a wedding dress. Not just any dress, but the one she had secretly sketched in the margins of her script notes years ago during their first collaboration, a design she had dismissed as a foolish dream. His eyes, usually so composed under the glare of cameras, burned with an intensity that made the air between them crackle. Rain dripped from his hair onto the pristine white fabric peeking from the bag, and in that single, suspended moment, the world outside, the screaming fans, the flashing paparazzi lenses, the endless contracts and endorsements ceased to exist. This was not a publicity stunt. This was not a scene from one of their dramas. This was real, raw, and utterly shocking, because Dylan Wang, the actor who had built an empire on charm and restraint, had just crossed a line no one in the industry thought he would ever dare to approach. To understand how this moment came to pass, one must rewind through the tangled threads of their shared history, a story that began not on a red carpet or in a lavish awards ceremony, but in the chaotic, fluorescent-lit backlots of a modest production studio 8 years earlier. Shen Yue had been a rising talent then, fresh from her breakthrough in a coming-of-age romance that had captured the hearts of millions. She was 23, wide-eyed and determined, carrying the weight of her family's quiet expectations on her slender shoulders. Her parents, both educators in a small southern town, had raised her with the belief that success in entertainment was a fleeting illusion, one that demanded ironclad discipline and zero room for personal entanglements. Dylan Wang, at 25, was already a phenomenon, a tall, brooding presence with a jawline that could launch 1,000 fan edits and a work ethic that left directors speechless. He had burst onto the scene with a historical drama that showcased his range from stoic warrior to tender lover, amassing a fanbase that spanned continents. When the producers announced their pairing for a light-hearted campus drama, the chemistry tests were electric, but no one anticipated the quiet undercurrent that would simmer beneath every scripted glance. Their first weeks on set were a whirlwind of early morning calls, late-night script revisions, and shared meals in the craft services tent where laughter came easily. Shen Yue remembered the exact afternoon it shifted. They were filming a rain scene ironically mirroring the one that would later define their real lives under artificial downpours that left them both soaked and shivering. Between takes, Dylan draped his jacket over her shoulders without a word, his fingers brushing her arm in a way that sent an unexpected jolt through her. "You don't have to pretend to be tough all the time," he had murmured, his voice low enough that only she could hear. It was not the line from the script. It was something deeper, a crack in the professional armor they both wore like second skin. From that day forward, their off-camera interactions became a private language of stolen conversations in makeup trailers, late texts about character motivations that evolved into discussions about life beyond the cameras, and subtle acts of kindness that the crew began to notice but never dared to question aloud. As the drama aired and skyrocketed in ratings, the rumors ignited like wildfire. Fan pages dissected every frame for hidden meanings. Tabloids speculated about secret dates and hidden romances. Yet behind the scenes, the truth was far more complicated. Dylan carried his own burdens, the pressure of being the sole breadwinner for an extended family after his father's early retirement due to health issues, the relentless scrutiny that turned every public appearance into a potential scandal, and the quiet fear that vulnerability could unravel the empire he had built brick by painstaking brick. Shen Yue, for her part, had just ended a quiet, short-lived relationship with a non-industry friend, one that had left her wary of mixing personal feelings with her professional world. They agreed, in hushed tones during a wrap party that stretched into the early hours, that whatever spark existed between them must remain unspoken. "The industry eats people alive," Dylan had said that night, his hand resting lightly on the back of her chair as they watched the city lights from a high-rise balcony. "We protect this by keeping it ours." It was a pact born of necessity, but it only deepened the ache of what they could not have. Years passed in a blur of separate projects, occasional cross-promotions, and the kind of coincidental encounters that felt orchestrated by fate itself. Shen Yue starred in a string of empowering female-led series, earning accolades for her portrayals of resilient women navigating love and ambition. Dylan dominated the action and romance genres, his international appeal growing with each blockbuster. Yet in quiet moments during award galas where their eyes would meet across crowded rooms, or in the rare group dinners where conversation flowed around them like a protective bubble, they felt the pull. There were nights when Shen Yue would scroll through old behind-the-scenes footage on her phone, pausing on a still of Dylan laughing at one of her improvised lines, and wonder what might have been if their paths had crossed in another life. Dylan, meanwhile, kept a small notebook in his trailer, filled with sketches and notes from their collaborations, including one page where he had absent-mindedly doodled her name intertwined with a simple wedding band design. He never showed it to anyone. Not until the night everything changed. The catalyst arrived during a period of intense personal turmoil for Shen Yue. Her latest project had wrapped amid whispers of industry restructuring, and her family back home faced unexpected financial strain after a family member's medical emergency. She had thrown herself into work as a shield, isolating herself in her modest studio apartment that doubled as a creative sanctuary. Late one evening, as thunder rumbled outside and the city prepared for another spring downpour, a soft knock echoed through her door. She assumed it was her assistant delivering revised contracts. Instead, when she swung the door open, there stood Dylan, his designer coat darkened by rain, his usually impeccable hair tousled, and in his arms that enormous garment bag. The shock hit her like a physical force. "Dylan, what are you doing here?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he stepped inside without invitation, closing the door behind him with a gentle click that sealed them in their own world. He set the bag down carefully on her worn leather couch, the one they had once shared during a script read-through years ago, and turned to face her. His expression was a mixture of resolve and raw emotion she had never seen in all their years of working together. "I couldn't wait any longer," he said, his words steady but laced with the kind of vulnerability that made her knees weak. 8 years of pretending. 8 years of watching you shine on every screen and knowing I was the one who got to see the real you, the one who doodles wedding dresses in the margins when she thinks no one's looking. Shen Yue's breath caught. How had he known she had never shown those sketches to a soul? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, weathered notebook, the very one from his trailer, and opened it to the page with her name and the ring sketch. "I kept this because I knew one day I would need proof that this wasn't just in my head." What followed was a conversation that unfolded over hours, as the rain outside intensified into a full storm that mirrored the emotions swirling within the room. Dylan spoke first of the fears that had held him back, the contracts that forbade public relationships during peak career phases, the fan backlash that could derail projects worth millions, the personal doubts that whispered he might not be enough for someone as independent and brilliant as her. He recounted a specific memory from their second collaboration, a period drama where they played star-crossed lovers separated by societal expectations. "Every time we filmed those farewell scenes," he confessed, "I wasn't acting. I was terrified it was practice for real life." Shen Yue listened, tears tracing silent paths down her cheeks, As she shared her own side the nights she had replayed their conversations in her mind, the way his quiet support during her lowest points had felt like an anchor in a sea of uncertainty, the guilt she felt for wanting more when her career demanded everything. As midnight approached and the storm began to ease, Dylan unzipped the garment bag with deliberate care. The wedding dress in sight was not an extravagant, celebrity favorite creation one might expect from a man of his status. It was the exact design she had sketched, elegant ivory silk with delicate lace sleeves that whispered of timeless romance, a fitted bodice embroidered with subtle floral patterns reminiscent of the southern gardens where she had grown up, and a flowing skirt that promised to move like poetry in motion. He had commissioned it from a reclusive designer in Paris, sending her original sketch.
Please subscribe.